Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, welcome to Think Small, everybody, the podcast where we sit down with founders, operators, and leaders who are in the trenches building real businesses. I'm your host, Denise Steinbring, and today's conversation is for every manufacturer, every shop owner, and honestly, every business leader who has ever looked at a room full of expensive equipment and wondered, are those machines actually running? And if they're not, why not? And how much money is sitting idle right now that I don't even know about? My guest today is Chris Moore, VP and co-owner of Caddis Systems, a machine monitoring company that started as an internal solution for a 100-year-old family manufacturing business in Iowa, proved itself so thoroughly that it drove a 38 percentage point jump in machine utilization and millions in additional revenue, and has since expanded into a standalone platform serving manufacturers across industries, from foundries to sawmills to food processing. Chris also has one of the most unexpected backstories of any guest I've had on this show. Chris, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to Think Small.
Well, thanks, Denise. I appreciate you having me. Excited to continue the podcast.
Great. So before we get into Caddis, I have to ask, because you went from producing shark documentaries for National Geographic and Discovery to being creative director for the Oregon Ducks football team, woohoo, to running a machine monitoring company in Bettendorf, Iowa. Walk us through that journey, because I think our listeners are really going to need to hear about it.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting, pretty unique. I don't think I've run across many people who's had the kind of the trajectory that I have in terms of how I got into machine monitoring. I guess kind of the backstory is our family has been in manufacturing, like you mentioned, for over 100 years. We started in steel foundries. As far as my involvement with the business, up to about 8 years ago, it had been more or less working on the foundry floor during the summers, during college, to earn extra money. I'm always fairly familiar with what was going on within the business, but didn't actively get involved till about 8 years ago when we transitioned into this machine monitoring. Prior to that, like you mentioned, I was involved on the creative side. So I was executive producer, you name it, director for a number of shark projects for National Geographic, History Channel, and then actually Discovery as well. So if you've ever watched Sharkmen or Shark Wranglers, United Sharks of America, you'll see my name kind of pop up. But it was interesting, that part of my life was exciting and great and was able to travel quite a bit. But with 3 young boys and a wife at home, it got to the point where looking for a little bit more land-based projects, really. So that led me to discussing the opportunity with our family back here in Iowa. And at that point, they were developing a solution called Caddis Systems to monitor their own machines. They looked at some other options. If anyone's familiar with the foundry environment, we have a lot of different types of machines, a lot of different models, a lot of different age. Just looking for a solution to give us really that uptime, downtime, and more visibility. And that's how Caddis initially came about.
And can you break it down a little bit more simply in terms of what is it that Caddis Systems does? What is the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, I mean, the foundation is essentially it's a source of truth in terms of, are the machines running? Are they not running? If they're not running, why aren't they running? In the past, our facilities, like other manufacturers, you're depending on a lot of human input in terms of, are the machines down or are they not down? You're asked someone why a machine was down on a Monday, you ask them on a Friday. In a lot of cases, it's going to be kind of a guess, like, well, I think Jerry didn't show up that day. Well, maybe the machine was actually going through maintenance. So we wanted to get that accurate depiction of why the machine was down. So for us, Caddis it's essentially the source of truth. We're directly wired to the machine. We're not depending on human input to know if our machines are on, know if they're cycling, know if they're actually generating revenue. And that's key when you have machines that are, could be, $1 million or more.
And this really started out as a way to solve a problem for your parent company, right? And then you guys built something amazing and were able to kind of kick it off on its own.
Right. Yeah, we developed it, like I said, to monitor, multiple facilities within LeClaire Manufacturing. and it just kind of it evolved to what it is now. Because as we were, bringing customers in to tour our floor, to, check parts, things like that, there seemed to be quite a bit of interest in what we had to offer. And at the time, it wasn't something that we thought would become, a separate business. But that's how it evolved. We saw a need at our foundry, and then others saw a need. And then since then, we've obviously gone into all different types of industries, primarily across the US and Mexico.
Okay. Any particular industry that is sort of your biggest, biggest
Sure.
customer base?
Yeah, I would say at this point it's probably more or less kind of machine shops.
Uh-huh.
So, a lot of companies that are basically machining different types of parts, whether it be aerospace, whether it be automotive, um, types of machines they typically have are called CNCs, could be verticals, could be horizontals, mills. And, that has been kind of the sweet spot for us. But that being said, in the last couple of years, we've really seen a lot of demand in kind of the forestry industry,
Oh,
whether it be sawmills, whether it be, those companies that actually make the tooling for sawmills.
sure.
So it's diversified. So we started out targeting more or less machine shops because we'd proven the system out on a lot of our machines. And then we've realized, and other people have realized that, our system can integrate on machine. So that has led to, from the medical to mining to, like I said, forestry, all types of industries, really.
Cool. Well, let's start with something that I think every founder in our audience will be able to relate to. You've been through your share of disruptions, not just market disruptions, but the kind that hit an entire industry simultaneously and nobody saw coming. Walk me through what COVID looked like for Caddis and tell me how a period of genuine uncertainty became one of the best growth opportunities you had.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, the whole COVID situation, we were affected by that. Our customers were affected by that. There was a lot of kind of, insecurity, and people were unsure about what the future held. But then as far as we looked at it, it was a nice opportunity to position Caddis as okay, there is some uncertainty, but the companies we were working with, there was also some optimism. So, okay, our machines are down right now, or they're slow right now. But this is a good time to kind of use that downtime to basically take our production operation to the next level. So with that, gave us an opportunity to present Caddis to these customers or potential customers, that said, hey, let's really take a step into this whole manufacturing 4.0 using systems like Caddis to integrate with our production environment. So when we do get up and running full speed, we'll have way more visibility and way more kind of just, opportunities, from asset management to, managing maintenance tasks, to actually just keeping machines running on a consistent basis without having to depend on, this whole manual input. So those machines being down was a great opportunity for us to really get in the door at a lot of companies and say, okay, you're down now, but that you'll be up and running here, in the near future. Why don't we get Caddis set up so when those machines get running, you know exactly what's going on at any point in time.
Yeah. And for a small business owner, maybe who's listening, who's in the middle of their own version of a slowdown right now, what's the mindset shift that you had to go through to, that separates the companies that use downtime productively from the ones that just wait for it to be over?
Sure. I think it's really, just promoting the fact that this is the way manufacture is going. It's getting to a point where, the competition is getting greater, not only, within the US, but from outside companies. So, if you want to basically adapt and evolve and be successful, something like machine monitoring or manufacturing 4.0, or even utilizing, all the different opportunities AI now offers with validating data and things like that. You really need to take a step forward because what you were doing in the past, it just genuinely won't be able to, uh, you know, essentially work in the future. It's just there's too much going on right now.
Yeah, makes sense. So here's what I found fascinating about Caddis when I dug into your story. You didn't build a machine monitoring system because you thought it would be a good business. You built it because every other system in the market was making the problem worse. When we talked, you described your competitors as overwhelming, so many alerts, so much data that shop floor workers eventually just stopped looking at any of it. So tell me about that problem and how simpler became your competitive advantage in an industry that tends to reward the most features.
Right. And you hate to be the guy. I'm not going to speak negatively about any specific company, but that was our firsthand experiences. We did try other systems, other solutions that were offered. And, some of the hurdles that we ran into, first of all, one system could work really well on one type of machine. The problem is we had, probably 50 different types of machines or more, and some, had, the PLC we could connect directly to, others didn't. They were more of kind of an analog input. And, with that, it caused some issues with finding one system, one dashboard that our team could utilize to access all machines. So that was one big problem. And then another problem is, there was almost too much data. So, everyone, you kind of think you want the latest and greatest, but the problem is if you're getting overwhelmed with data all day and checking your phone for alarms and alerts on basically issues that don't involve you at all, you tend to ignore the really important thing, which is keeping your machine running. So for us, it was like, okay, we need to find a system or develop a system gives the people the data they need to perform their tasks to the best of their ability and also adapts to all the different types of machines we had. So we're not having to log into 10 different dashboards on a daily basis. We can just go to one place and see that visibility of our entire operation, on one screen.
Interesting. Yeah, you had said something earlier that struck with me. Your ERP, your scheduling system, your maintenance system, they're only as good as the machine data feeding them. So, what does it look like when a manufacturer discovers that their data might have been wrong for all these years? And how does that impact, their EBITDA and their financial performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's critical. I mean, as far as finding out your machine data is wrong, I mean, that's a big deal. And it can cause, typically it's not going to go on for a long time because someone will notice it pretty quick. If you're expecting, a part run to be 100 parts and you're seeing that only 50 showed up, obviously that's a lot of revenue that's being lost. So, I think, addressing the issue quickly is important. As far as your machine data, just ensuring that that data is correct, and it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's as basic as just standing at your machine seeing its cycle, which could mean a laser firing and cutting a sheet of steel, or it could mean a tool finishing off whatever type of part. So it's really just it's a basic understanding of what your expectations are, and then looking at your data and making sure that those align what you expect and what your machine's actually doing. And I think with our system is nice because there's a number of different ways you can integrate it into a machine or onto a machine. Typically, it's a direct wire system where you just tap into something like a stack light, which is typically going to be indicative the machine is not only on, but it's actually running. But then there's other, vibration sensors, things like that that you can connect through our hardware that'll also give you the information that's accurate and in real time.
Yeah. So, as somebody that has spent her life in marketing, I'm curious about your source of truth framing, right? Because it repositions Caddis from a tool that you want to a tool that you really can't compete without. How did you land on that language, and how has it changed your sales conversations?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of landed on it, and I have to give credit to the president of Leclerc Manufacturing. He basically utilizes Caddis as a source of truth for the data because we've proven it out over 8 years, and we know that our system says machine is cycling, it is cycling, and it is producing a part. So what the source of truth really applies to is you have a lot of different types of systems, typically at a manufacturing environment, whether it be your ERP system, your scheduling system, your maintenance platform, although Caddis does maintenance management as well. But the problem is with those type of platforms, a lot of that data is manual input. So your ERP, you're going to have someone go in and he's going to say, hey, today I ran 50 parts. Well, he knows that, bonus time is coming up and he needs to hit that 50 parts. And so he's just maybe, more or less taking a risk that that's not going to be validated in a timely way. Whereas now you can validate the Caddis data with your ERP data using, and not to get too deep in the technical side, but with, like, it's called an MCP server. You could connect that to Caddis, to these other systems, which then allows like AI to go in, something like a Claude assistant, go in, review the data, validate it, say, hey, Caddis is showing, you ran 48 parts, your ERP is showing you ran 50 parts. This is the operation where we see those two parts could be stuck in. So it's going to be able to kind of multitask problem solve because that data we know the truth behind the Caddis data. We know it's accurate. We know it's real. We're not depending on anyone to go in and say that machine is running, that machine ran this many parts.
Yeah, and that getting that foundational data is critical, especially if you're going to start using AI to make some assumptions on that.
It is. With AI, with your maintenance, with your part runs, with your asset management. Again, if you're showing a machine needs to run 100 parts, and there's no way to really accurately predict when that part run is completed, other than walking by the machine and seeing a tote full of completed parts. There's going to be a delay in that job change, and so again, before you spend the money on another $1 million piece of machinery, you can use something like Caddis to really manage your assets and to really schedule your part runs, your project runs in a way that's going to be most efficient.
Yeah, and what percentage of your customers do you think right now are currently using AI? Are they using just generative AI like a Chat GPT, or is that a service that you provide to them to say, let's put in Caddis, but then let's also, layer some AI agents on top to give you even more deep insights?
Sure. Yeah, I would say as far as a percentage of the customers that are using AI right now, it's probably close to 70 to 80%, but they're probably using it on a more basic level.
Mhm.
I know I use AI a lot just to, prepare for a meeting. What is the backstory? How could Caddis complement this company
Mm.
to be more productive? Things like that. So that's a general basis. But as far as using AI as a tool to multitask problem solve in your production environment, it's probably closer to like 10%.
Mm.
It's they're just starting to get into that. They're starting to realize the possibilities where, instead of, doing your own data analysis through spreadsheet after spreadsheet, you can now connect, something like Caddis to those Excel spreadsheets, to your Epic or your ERP platform, and it's going to actually pinpoint where the discrepancies are without having to spend hours. It's going to, quickly give you the output of, all right, this is where your quality issues are. This is where your part loss could be. This is an operation that's actually affecting your workflow. So it's becoming more and more prevalent. But I think it's just a slow transition because I think AI can be seen as, kind of this scary thing that, could take over the world or whatever. But if you use it in the correct way, and also just, you do have to, somewhat, you know, when you get your response, you do have to validate the AI response in some way just to ensure that it's giving you the data and you're able to see, okay, this makes sense. But it's as reliable as I think you can get at this point.
Yeah.
As far as offering as a service, yeah, we're definitely, in a position to educate people on what you can do, and how to kind of capitalize on this AI direction a lot of people are going. And again, we've used it, we've tested it. We have customers that would be happy to get on a call and kind of give that firsthand feedback as, listen, this is what we've been able to learn by using this AI MCP Server Connect solution.
Ah, well, that's a great offer. Great to know. Um, You had said something earlier to me that I wanted to dig into because I think a lot of small business owners feel like growth is entirely on their shoulders, but they have to personally find every customer, close every deal, and reach new markets themselves. but you built Caddis expansion substantially through partnerships. So tell me how that model actually works, and maybe give me a specific example of a partnership that took you somewhere you never expected to go.
Right. Yeah. Just starting off, initially, we were a small kind of spin-off of a, mid-sized to large, parent company. And so it was key for us to partner with companies, not only on the distribution side, but also on, like the OEM side. So, you're building a part or you're offering a solution. Why don't we offer Caddis as more or less kind of an add-on? I think, one opportunity that came to us early on was a company called Logic. They're based out of the Kansas City area. And they helped open the doors with kind of food processing, which was kind of another avenue we didn't really target initially. We were kind of that, focused on the metal, the machinery type companies. But they opened the doors for food processing companies. Now we're throughout the US in a number of different facilities, and hopefully expanding more on the European side in food processing. So that's just one example. We meet at the end of May with a major ERP provider to become one of their key partners or one of their alliance partners. And then on the distribution side, yeah, we're continuously meeting with other people that want to now include Caddis as one of their key kind of automation monitoring solutions.
Interesting. And did you meet Logic, that example, like at a trade show? I think people need to get outside of their four walls sometimes, right? And take a look around and see what's happening in their industry. How did that relationship come about?
Yeah, we've used trade shows a lot to really grow. Initially we were focusing on the big ones like IMTS, and that is where we were introduced to Logic. But then we'll do some other, different types like the forestry trade show, like the packaging trade show. And I think because Caddis is such it's a solution that can be utilized in any type of kind of production related environment, on any type of machine. It hasn't limited us on the type of trade shows we focus on. Iowa's great. They have an incentive program where if there's an international audience at some of these trade shows, they give you actually a grant to cover, a portion of the cost. So I think just being based in Iowa has allowed us to really, attend more trade shows than maybe we initially would have. But it does, you meet all kinds of people, and it's just, again, it's getting your name out there. If you got to stay relevant, if you, stay in your office and wait for the phone to ring, I just don't think that's going to work out very well.
Yeah. And you've shared that trade shows has been one of your biggest avenues of success, more so than like digital marketing, which is a counterintuitive answer in 2026. The Small Business Expo research team just published their latest data, and they said 53.3% of small businesses feel like customer demand is still their biggest challenge. Is that true for you, or how do you go about finding customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a need for digital marketing. I think you have to, I mean, you have to, keep your website updated, using AdWords, things like that, targeting kind of the type of people that you want to, introduce Caddis to is key. The problem with digital marketing is it can become kind of in a rabbit hole. I think there's a lot of people out there that do a great job at digital marketing, but it's tough to compete with, what keyword is working, this week, or, our spend needs to increase by $30,000 to compete with this company that, has 5,000 employees. So I think you just have to be careful in how you diversify your marketing tactics. I definitely think there's a role for digital marketing, but I think it's coming back to, people get so many emails, they get, harassed all day long, like I'm sure we all do. And it's tough to, really identify what is a legitimate email, what is not. So I think, sometimes using some old school tactics like calling someone up, meeting someone in person. It's almost like a breath of fresh air when someone actually stops by the office, like, oh wow, you're a real person, you came in. Yeah, I'm okay with you cold calling and coming by, because it's just nice to meet who you are what your kids do. And you don't get that through these emails that are just, you can tell they're automated and there's really no personality behind it. So I think it's that balance. Yes, digital marketing, it's not going to go away. There's a definite need for it, but I think people shouldn't be afraid to, give someone a call, introduce yourself, maybe, learn a little bit about the person before you try to sell them, whatever it is that you're selling. So I think we do a good job in balancing that.
Good. Well, we're in the final stretch, and I want to end with something that every manufacturer and every production environment business owner listening can actually take action on. You've talked about manufacturing 4.0 briefly, this shift from manual, reactive shop floor management to real-time data-driven decision making. For a shop owner who knows they need to make that shift but hasn't really started yet, what, in your opinion, is the most important thing they should do first?
I mean, that's a good question. I think first, I think they genuinely need to ask themselves, are they getting, the full visibility of their production environment at any time? That is, are they getting the information they need to know that their facility is running as efficiently as it can be at any given time? And typically, if they don't have some type of, system, you're not going to be able to answer that question. I think it's just asking you a question. Okay, what are we doing? Do we have the visibility we need to ensure that our facility is running, as best we can? And then are we competitive with what our competitors are offering? Are we competitive with, being able to manage, our projects, our assets? And what does the future hold? Are we okay with being in the same spot 20 years from now? Or do we want to grow and expand? And what do we need to do to take those steps to grow and to expand? So again, do we have the visibility, our growth? Where do we want to grow from? And then what steps do we need to take in order to meet our goals?
Sure. And do you have a case study or an example you could share of a customer that actually recognized that and made that shift?
Yeah, we have a few, and I do have one pulled up because I can't remember all the details, but I'm going to go ahead. So we have a company that kind of introduced us to the forestry industry, and I use them because they're great. They're based out of the Boston area. They're called the Sharp Tool Company. So what they do is they make tooling for basically like sawmills for forestry type of facilities. And so when they came to us, they were like, hey, listen, we're depending on a lot of manual input right now. We don't really know if our machines are running or if they're not running. So that was a challenge for them. It was all manual tracking, all reactive communication. Since they've integrated Caddis, this has been about 2.5 years at this point. They've been able to significantly reduce reduction downtime. So they've reduced it by over 25%. That's across their entire facility. So I think it's like 50 plus machines. And they've also increased their utilization by 10%. So, 10% in utilization, when you're costing out a machine at say, $150 to $500 an hour, increasing 10% across 50 machines, that's a huge increase in revenue. So it not only increases kind of the company growth and the company bottom line, but it increases, profitability, the profit sharing, the bonuses. That's one example, and they've referred us to numerous other customers. They're always great to, just, really promote Caddis and what it's done for them.
Mhm.
So that's the Sharp Tool Company.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Chris, this has been a genuinely fun conversation. And for our listeners who want to learn more about Caddis Systems or get in touch with you, where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, our website is just caddissystems.com. We have a lot of information. We have documentation, we have wiring, we have, case studies, videos, you name it. There's a number on there that they can call as well. They're more than welcome to call us anytime. We do offer trials. So if you're in a position where you're not really sure about the investment you want to make, you want to prove out the system before you commit to anything,
Yeah.
we're happy to offer 60-day trials. So I think, our position is, listen, we don't want to sell you something that's going to sit on your desk and be an expensive paperweight. We want this system to really give you results. And, like I said, just developing that relationship. It's kind of old school, but we do want to become, a partner in your growth and your success, and we'll do everything we can to make that happen.
That's great. And to our Think Small listeners, if today's conversation made you think differently about what's actually happening on your shop floor or reminded you that the right data at the right time is the foundation of everything else, please share this podcast with somebody who needs to hear it. We'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for your time, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
You bet. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?